Right, hello and welcome back. Okay, you guys may know it's a little bit different already because so far we've learned about building and learned the game from this perspective of surviving in space. Another aspect of this game is planets. Planets offer a very different experience and a very different challenge indeed to space. On planets, you have gravity to contend with and you have to manage that. Your engineer will behave differently on a planet as will your ship designs. And not only will you require different thruster types to fly here, you require different designs of thrusters, the amount of thrusters in different directions. There are a number of things features I would like to highlight. There are a lot of things on planets that I could go over, but if I get too much, these tutorials become too much. So this is the basics, and the basics I think you need to know is your jetpack, gravity, thrusters, oxygen-rich environments, and wind turbines. Okay, those are the main areas I think will be beneficial to cover. So first things first, let's cover the jetpack. Now, your jetpack in space only has to push your body in a direction, and that's it. So it uses very little actual fuel. You won't be able to see it on this because I'm in creative, but I can demonstrate. On a planet, your jetpack is fighting to keep your entire mass upright, and then it's stopping your entire mass in the direction that you wish to go. Okay? So if you think about it, in space it just needs to give you a little shove and you'll keep going in that direction. But here it needs to hold your weight. There you go, and because you will fall down because of gravity. Now, there are ways to manage gravity. Okay, you can just have a lot more bottles in your inventory, 3 or 4, 2, 3, 4, and just fill them up. And that way you can then go around your ship and weld it up if you need to, get on top and fix something or whatever you need to do. Or you can learn scaffolding. Scaffolding is simply blocks that you don't need to weld up, and you can make them into a shape that allows you to run up and jump or whatever to get onto your ship, but you can then do the repairs. So that every piece of scaffold you make is going to be unique. Okay? So scaffolding is a secret. There you go, pro tip for you. You just run up on these blocks, and they don't need to be welded up because they're temporary. And then when you're finished with that part, you can just cut this down. Okay? Simple. Or as I say, you can carry a lot more bottles in your inventory. Okay, now, gravity itself, it's a force, as we know, that acts upon the mass of objects and pulls that mass towards it. Okay? And it will act on any unsupported mass in the game. Like I showed you just now, your engineer, if he's not got any fuel, falls out of the sky. In space, if we were to cut a block loose, it would just float there. But here, you can see, it fell down. That's a light armor block falling from a few feet. It's fallen down and smashed into the armor here and damaged it quite extensively. Okay, so if you can imagine, let's just quickly grab a copy of this. So if you can imagine having something the size of a ship above your base, That's going to do significant damage, yeah, to your ship. The base is on large grid, so it took a lot less damage. However, there is damage here, you see. I need to actually fix that for something later on, so let's just quickly repair that. But the ship itself totaled just from one little. So this is something you need to bear in mind, okay? Which takes me on to the next topic. Really, you really need to know the differences with thrusters. Thrusters are massive in Space Engineers because that's how we move along, right? And that's how we stop, and so on and so forth. But on a planet, you need to think about something that you don't need to think about in space. For instance, let's look at this design here for the miner. That is a lot more thrust than you would use in space. And why is that? Because we have 4 lifting thrusters, or 2 lifting thrusters there, and I think it's 2 at the front, which would be enough in space. And it would push you forwards, okay? We have pushing forwards. But look, we have large engines at the sides and on the braking. Why is that? Well, simple reason is, whatever amount of thrust you need to lift your ship, you're going to need in all directions. Because if you roll your ship that doesn't have enough thrust on the side, gravity will pull it out of the air. So for example, if your ship requires 6 thrusters to lift it, and you only have 3 on the right, on each side, but you roll to the right, you then only have half the thrust holding your ship requires. You only have half the thrust required to keep your ship in the air. It will crash to the ground. If you also need to consider the mass of a fully loaded ship. For instance, a mining ship. Now in space we just put thrusters around so we could have brake and push back out the rock. Here's the thing, on a planet, the thrusters, when you're pushing back from the rock, need to lift the entire weight of the ship and its load. So when you design ships, this is a really ugly design. This is Keynes' design. Excuse me. This is not my design, but it does highlight the point that you need a lot of thrust on the planet in order for it to maintain its altitude. Okay, there are examples of modded thrusters, etc. But for vanilla, you need to consider a fully laden ship, and it's going to have to hold that weight whichever directional thrust you ask it to rely upon. For instance, if you point the nose into the air, on this ship, it only has 1 large and 1 small thruster giving thrust in that direction, right? So it's not going to actually push up with the nose pointing up very easily. And if it has to support the weight, it probably won't. However, if you roll to the side in this ship, which you probably will when you're mining, because remember you bounce around a lot when you're mining, and you could end up going to the side. If you don't have enough thrust, you'll end up stuck down a hole. Believe me, it happens a lot. This goes for utility ships as well, welders and miners, welders, grinders, miners, and cargo ships, because you've got to remember about them being fully laden. Okay, good. Very important. I want you to know that. Now, one other thing I'd love to show you on planets is oxygen-rich environments and how to use them. Okay, what is an oxygen-rich environment? Well, on the planet, if you look at my center bar there, I'll get it so you can see it. There we go. Right at the bottom, underneath the waving hand on the 0 key there, is 2 green words. One says O2 high, and the other is a little icon that says warm. So those are my environmental warnings. Okay, with the O2 there, I can as you saw in the intro, my character has his helmet open. I do not need bottles on a high oxygen environment. So I can run around without my visor down. I'm not reliant on bottles because there's plenty of air. Now this isn't just unique to planets, but I wanted to introduce it on planets because this is probably where you're going to come across it, because most people will start on the Earth-like planet. There are other planets, there's Mars and an alien planet. They do not have oxygen environments, so you will need to maybe want to create one, or on a large ship, or even a small ship. You want to create an oxygen environment. Now, how do we do it? This is how we make an oxygen environment. Now, this is a completely sealed from all outside gaps, okay? We used armor blocks and they've used glass, but as long as it is sealed and there are no gaps anywhere in this room, okay, that is a pressurized environment. That is now able to be pumped full of gas or oxygen. Okay, this is a vent. I haven't introduced you to this block yet, but it's a simple block that has usually a large port on a large grid one and a small port on a small grid one, and it is piped in, as you can see through our piping here, to an oxygen generator. Right, oxygen tanks on the sides for storage. The pipe work does go through into here, because I think it goes underneath actually. Right, so this entire room is sealed off, and as you can see, the green lights come on. And if we go to the control panel here, the way to test to find out whether your environment is sealed, hello, there we are, is you open the K menu on a vent, and it will tell you down here in the bottom right corner, room is maximum pressurized, done. If it says room not pressurized, you've got a gap somewhere. Now, one very important thing, rock face is not considered a airtight material. Because it's permeable, air will flow through it and it will not allow you to form a seal. Okay, so you won't be able to just use a rock asteroid and put up a little face and have or dig a hole in a planet and have a sealed environment. It needs to be a completely sealed chamber with a piped in air vent, oxygen generator and a tank with some ice. That's simply it. So as long as you've got the ventilation system, I now have in here, this could be on Mars, and I could run around in this room or my entire base if you did it on the whole base without using oxygen bottles and without my visor open. Secondly to that, there's a little neat little function. If it's an oxygen rich environment, it will replenish your suit's O2 levels by absorption. So just running around in this environment will replenish the suit levels of oxygen. Kind of neat. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you is wind turbines. Okay, they are unique to planets, and they are a neat little form of free power that your base can use. Now, that one, if we go down here and we find it, we go into the K menu, we find the wind turbine. Now, that's given us, I don't know if it's going to work quite the same in creative, but its maximum output is 371 kilowatts. Okay, its clearance is optimal. Now, what it means is the things you need to function is height is better and clearance from the wind. So if I was to put blocks around here like so, you can actually notice this thing slowing down. You see that? I'm blocking the airflow to it and it's slowing down. So it requires, There you go, see? It's almost stopped to come to a complete stop. The best placement for a wind turbine is up high, stick it up 10 blocks, and completely clear of any other types of interference. Okay? But they are free energy. You don't need to put fuel in there, and you can just build them out like that. These won't interfere with each other, the wind flow, because if you look, there's the box. See that red box, the secondary red box, the big one? That's its required space. Okay? But if you block it further apart, let me want to check that. So let's put one down here. Now we know that the blocking is there, but if we put up a wall further away than what it's supposed to be, yep, it's slowing it down. So it is the path towards it, not just an area, right? So there you go, see, look, that's outside of that big red box, but it's still affecting the speed of this thing. And obviously with these things, the better, the faster they go, the more power they are going to generate for you. So be aware when you place them not to be in a place where they're blocked, because that thing now is useless. But look at the speed of those, not being interfered with at all. Okay, so that's really it. I wanted to show you the differences of some planet stuff. We've covered gravity and the effects it has on unsupported structures. The fact that gravity means you need to have a different plan for your thrusters, and that can be a little bit of trial and error. But a good rule of thumb for that is however much thrust is required to lift it, you require that thrust on all directions that you're going to be placing the weight, okay, or the mass. We've covered the fact that your jetpack is going to require a lot more fuel, and we've covered oxygen-rich environments and wind turbines, and that's it. That's pretty much the basics of the differences on planets. In the next video, we will go into another planet and kind of satellite feature, which is wheels and wheeled vehicles. We're going to cover those next. But for this one, it's big love from the Big Brit. Take care and ta-da.